I thought I might start with these chapters in one of Nietzsche's books, which I thought you might appreciate. I'd like to know which student you think would be most likely to write a book like Nietzsche. Chapter 1, Why I Am So Wise. Chapter 2, Why I Am So Clever. Chapter 3, Why I Write Such Good Books.
That's all Abdul. This is Abdul's book. Why do I write such good books?
I like this one. Why I Am a Destiny.
Declaration of...
That's all.
Declaration of War and the Hemisphere.
That's so you.
I'm a fool myself.
Here's some.
You said on soccer post, I am Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm handsome.
Yeah, that's actually some quotes. Nietzsche thought he was amazing. The thing is, he was actually a genius, so I don't know, did he get to write books like that? Seems arrogant still, doesn't it? Here's some other quotes I'd like to read. I just want to get a sense for what he's like. After we've read these quotes, I'm going to get you to write a bit of a summary or a sense, or tell us what the vibe is of Friedrich Nietzsche that you're getting from his quotes. Okay? You've already read a little bit. We watched the video the other day, so you've already got a bit of an idea what this heavily moustached guy is like, yeah? So let's read some more quotes. There's some famous things that he's said or written. And then I want you to write like a vibe statement, or like, what do I think he's about so far? So, that which does not kill us makes us stronger. Really key Nietzsche quote. That which does not kill us makes us stronger. Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. Very philosophical kind of statement. Yeah. It's not a lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages. Interesting one. Whoever fights monsters should see to it in the process that he does not become a monster. If you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you. Movie. That always makes me think of anime. I don't know why. Anime seems a bit like that. He's saying that darkness is in everyone. Yeah? And if you think you're a hero, it's because you're not looking properly into yourself. Yeah? The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. So the higher we fly, the more noble, the more achievement we get. The further away, the less people understand you, the less people can associate with you, the less people appreciate what flight is. Does that make sense?
I'm quoting that as me said that.
Oh my god.
You're right. One ought to hold on to one's heart, for if one lets it go, one soon loses control of the head too. What's that maybe saying? Something like,
Don't lose sight of yourself.
you don't lose sight of yourself. Yeah, control your heart.
He lost, but you lost. So,
The snake which cannot cast its skin, you guys know how snakes lose their skin, has to die. As well, the minds which are prevented from changing their opinions, they cease to be mind. That's kind of interesting.
It's very deep.
Another way to be
Should we do some more? The surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. The surest way to corrupt a youth is to make him think that the only smart people are people who agree with him. Anyone who disagrees with you is dumb. That's the best way to corrupt someone. Yeah? I'm not upset that you lied to me, I'm upset that from now on I can't believe you. Trust.
someone's got to put that on their Instagram stories.
Instagram quote.
Instagram quote. Put on my story.
DM someone with that.
With a blank screen.
No one can construct for you the bridge upon which precisely you must cross the stream of life. No one but you yourself alone. Everyone's responsible for their own passage. Yeah? Today, as always, men fall into two groups, slaves and free men. Whoever does not have 2/3 of his day for himself is a slave. Whatever he may be, a statesman, a businessman, an official, or a scholar. What does it mean 2/3 of his day?
Like if we morning and waking hour.
Yeah, like time, right? He's saying if you work for more than 1/3 of your day, you're a slave to those needs. Yeah? How much are you awake? How many hours are you awake in a day?
A lot.
That's 16. 16 if you're getting 8 hours sleep. So that means how much time does he want you to have? About 10 hours to yourself?
Oh,
Bit over? you guys have that?
No. Not right now.
Slaves? I'm even more so, right? For you guys, especially in year 12. Slaves to homework.
I'm not a slave.
Or maybe you're just like,
Yeah, exactly.
maybe that's what you want to be doing. Yeah? Anyway, let's keep going.
Maybe that means.
There are no beautiful surfaces without a terrible depth.
Huh?
You're saying that there's nothing beautiful that doesn't have a terrible depth or a terrible underbelly. Yeah? Nothing can be beautiful just on the surface level without having some sort of terrible depth to it. We'll get into this a little bit more. Let's do that. You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist. What does this sound like? Concepts that we've studied in terms of ethics? Relativism, right? Nietzsche was a radical perspectivist. He thought that morality wasn't an objective thing. Yeah, there are no moral facts in the world. There's your way and there's my way. But as for the right way, the correct way, the only way, it does not exist. Man is the cruelest animal. Keep going. What does your conscience say? You should become the person you are. Alright, this one's actually kind of interesting. Nietzsche had this aphoristic style, which means that sometimes he wrote books that were just completely in short passages of sayings or short like notes or journal pieces almost. It's almost like he was writing just in snappy quotes. But sometimes he wrote whole books that way, where each paragraph was like a standalone thing, just snappy quotes like this. Yeah, you should become the person you are. And you were meant to, by either flicking through and reading random bits or reading the whole thing, get a sense of the general vibe of it. Does that make sense to everyone? Do you want to keep reading or do you want to do some writing and then move on? Keep reading some fast. Blessed are the forgetful, for they get the better even of their blunders. Nietzsche thought that forgetfulness, in some cases, was a gift because you need to be able to forget your failures. You need to be able to forget the bad things that happen. You can't remember all of them all the time. You need to be able to forget the things that you did badly deliberately as well. You need to be able to forget, for example, that all of your clothes were made by slave labour in a third world country.
Okay.
Right? You're saying that you can't live your life constantly second guessing all the bad things that happen.
Therefore, we should know their words.
Last one. Here the ways of men divide. If you wish to strive for peace of soul and happiness, then believe. If you wish to be a disciple of truth, then inquire. Yeah, so if you want peace and happiness, you should believe things. But if you want truth, you should inquire. You should investigate. You should look into. Does that make sense? As an activity. All right, I want you to write a quick statement. To me, Friedrich Nietzsche seems to be saying, or seems to be about, he emphasizes, if you like, you can write about the way that he's different to Plato and Aristotle so far. It's up to you. But I'm after a short statement, maybe 3 or 4 lines, something like that, about your sense of Nietzsche so far.
That is the definition of filthy.
It's like a rap.
It's just.
Alright. I'm tempted to read out all of them around the room. Should we do that, or do you want to stand up and walk and read everyone? Alright, so everyone's standing up there. Walk around and have a read of what everyone else wrote.
That's what you think about.
I'll read your first because you're
Good to read that people are pretty on the money.
On the money.
In the ballpark with the sense of where Nietzsche's at, yeah? He was very individualistic. He wanted to re-question and reevaluate society's values, yeah, and moral values, etc. Yeah. Let's get into the reading. Let's read from the start, first of all. We've already talked a little bit about his life, so we're going to skip the first bit. But let's look at the second paragraph on the first page about good and evil. So, in Beyond Good and Evil, that's the name of the text that we're reading from. It's a short passage from this book. Nietzsche accuses past philosophers, and he's specifically talking about people like Plato and Aristotle, of lacking critical sense and blindly accepting dogmatic premises in their consideration of morality. What does dogmatic mean, Abdul? No, apart from like the animal. Do you know what it means?
Problematic.
Not quite, no.
Like, kind of like set in like a way, like basic, like really, I don't know how to...
Very insightful, Jeremy. Very insightful.
Standard. It's a set of beliefs or instructions or something that is very set and is unquestioned. Yeah, so an unquestioned set of beliefs or practices that are accepted by people who are learning without question. Yeah? Does that make sense? Like, why are you going to get married when you're older? Oh, because, you know, my parents did. Oh, why did they get married when they're old? Oh, because their parents did. Yeah, if you just do that for no reason without questioning it all the time, it'll be a dogmatic practice. Make sense? Alright. So he wants to challenge blindly accepting dogmatic premises in their consideration of morality. Specifically, he accuses them of founding grand metaphysical systems. He means the idea that there are objective facts, upon the faith that the good man is the opposite of the evil man, rather than just a different expression of the same basic impulses that find more direct expression in the evil man. He's going to clarify that he doesn't think good men and evil men are so different morally. They actually have the same set of drives, and they actually have the same motivations. Yeah? And there's different expressions of those motivations and drives in different people. But we'd be foolish if we were to ignore the commonality between good men and evil men. Good people and evil people. Does that make sense? Alright. The work moves into the realm beyond good and evil, in the sense of leaving behind the traditional morality, which Nietzsche subjects to a destructive critique, in favour of what he regards as an affirmative approach, a building-up approach, that fearlessly confronts the perspectival nature of knowledge and the perilous condition of the modern individual. He died in the year 1900, so when we're talking about the modern individual, we're talking about someone who was around about then. So he's going to tear down traditional morality, and he wants to put in its place some sort of new form of values or new morality based on a better awareness of the human condition, the way we are. Yeah? One of his other books is called The Genealogy of Morality.
Genealogy.
What's a genealogy?
And you have 3 wishes.
When you have to do the dishes?
No, 3 wishes.
3 wishes.
3 wishes? No, genies. Genies give you 3 wishes. Does anyone know what a genealogy is? It's to do with genetics. The origins, yeah, nice. The origins or the birthplace or the history. Oh, so your genealogy is your family tree. Yeah? Your genealogy would include you, your siblings, but your parents, your grandparents, all the way back as far as you can go. That's your genealogy. So it's about your origins. It's about where you come from. Yeah? Now for Plato and Aristotle, there's no genealogy of the good. The good is just like the sun, yeah? Or oxygen. They're just there in the world, right? But for Nietzsche, moral ideas are born, and then they change and they give birth to other moral ideas through time. Yeah? Let's write this down as some notes before we get into the text. So, Nietzsche uses the word genealogy in one of his other titles to imply that morality question
Mark goes with
that is born and grown based on the society which creates it. So here's a key question for us to think about before we start reading this text, just before we start. Does what's good and evil change over time
Yeah.
throughout history? Or does our understanding of it change, but what's actually good and evil doesn't change? We just come to a better awareness of what's actually good? Or are we genuinely changing what is good, what we mean by the word good, and is that all that it means? Is there nothing more to good and evil than what we mean at the time? For instance, you might think looking back that it was bad that women couldn't vote in Australia. And you might think it's always been bad that women couldn't vote in Australia. But in the future, we might look back at things that we do now with the same sort of lens. Does that mean we are wrong about those things now?
Yes.
Or are our values just going to shift and change? If we decided in the future that maybe men shouldn't vote, would that be good? Would that become what goodness is? Would that be right? Or would we be wrong about some objective fact about how morality works? Talk to the person next to you. Does what's good and evil change over time? Go for it.
Yes.
Understanding.
Well, I think it's already described over time. Was like, oh wow.
No, I don't think
It feels like good effort.
He thought it was
like,
good,
yeah,
but
to influence what could be.
No, it feels good. Over time. Now, obviously,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Perception.
Oh, he's
Because I think it always wants to.
That's the question. Is there is? Or is there something deeper? Like whether it would really wrong to go. That's the question.
Yes. I think, yeah. But a lot of people back in that day will probably justify
Obviously
that.
not everyone can change.
Yeah.
But okay, so take a step back. Let's say Hitler won the World War, and then 20 years later, he's educated everyone around the world. Take just go to everyone and start he's taking over everyone, and everyone agrees that it was good to wipe out the Jews because they were a terrible race. Does that mean that it was right?
Yeah, World War III
Or
happens. We will.
are they all 100% mistake?
I think it's objective goodness or evilness that
They're mistaken.
Yeah, right.
But they'll be taught in the way in which it's right.
Yes, but they're wrong about it.
depends on the
Third say
They're saying there is morality in the world, and they're all wrong about it.
what good
Yeah.
and evil depends
I
on
think
what
so.
like
Okay, nice. What if it happened the other way,
power
and Hitler
authority has some power.
But this
lost the war?
Yeah.
And we all were convinced that what he did is terrible.
Yeah.
Is that, how do we know we're right?
Oh, man.
Because they thought they were right.
Yeah.
How do we know we're right?
That's what good
Actually, I know.
standard is.
That's the other side of the problem. What do you
That's
think?
what they do, man.
See, I
No.
can't answer that.
Hindsight's 100%. Hindsight's 40%.
Yeah.
One is spread at sea, so to him ricochet back. So you think it was what's good?
Let me see who squares up like next to you.
Huh?
Let me see who the
Yeah.
fight next
Well,
to
this guy's example is what if Hitler won the war?
Let's
Does
see
that
who
mean
the
what's good could have shifted to genocide was necessary?
Yeah, man.
Can you shift that far?
Yeah, logic is-
Oh my gosh. They're
For
playing
sure,
awesome.
would they be
You're
right?
at the average, you're gonna get hammered 3-0, mate.
Have you played any real competition?
Yeah, Chelsea 4-0.
I just about this.
Sure.
Then it goes back to what is your objective?
And move.
Yeah, is there effective morality? Right. Good one.
Southampton?
Ah.
No.
I'm sure.
Okay.
No, because Hitler's
So,
all
Trump's
the
in now,
Because it's just bad.
and that means that racism's
Dude, I
is
reckon you would have blocked this
Is that right?
If
If he changed the law as well.
Yeah, this is what we used to do.
Mexican people can't have jobs anymore.
Yeah,
That's okay. That's what's good.
It was a good contribution.
No, is it good in the world? Is it good?
Yeah.
Full stop.
And I was used to say the golden child, then like, is it good in the world? He changed. We still used to talk.
Yeah, is it good in the full
Yes,
sense of the
it's
word
good.
He
good?
took me out of the class
To
and
not give Mexicans jobs
because
because of
I
their
said to
their-
go off. I really think she said me out just because I like
Acceptable. It's acceptable in society. Is there anything more to goodness though? Is there any sense in which is bad to
Because
not
the
give
teacher,
Mexicans
because I
jobs?
used to talk to the teacher like
Even if everyone thinks
I should
that
have
it's
been
good.
not like a teacher.
Yeah, it's
Like I used to say, nah, come on,
Racism
bro.
always
Racism's
bad.
always bad,
It was always
even
bad.
if everyone's
That's
racist.
cool,
Yeah.
yeah, but chill.
Yeah, it's good.
Said no, it's good times.
Yes.
The rest is just-
Yeah.
Does it?
No, it's
Well,
good
we
change
had
over
a
time.
ton of chose it, and
We
everyone
got
else
two
was
other
it.
people that did the rest of it. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, 3 of us.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
And then
Hanging.
Ellen did that.
Yeah.
Never asked.
Bad.
Just like, yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the
And
core
that
of
had
what
to
you
be
think is
in the
good
morning class.
hasn't really
I
changed.
came in the class, I was
But
all these
It's all
Your
because ancient is the
the
law.
Yeah.
influence
It does not
around
actually
you
just
can.
Sure. What about like societies as a whole? Their values change over time.
Hitler.
Like we didn't used to give Aboriginal people the vote or even count them as citizens rights. But now in society, even though individuals might always have the same opinion, basically just going to grow with different But our society changed and we count citizens or Is that changing what goodness is, or is that just realizing?
Don't say anything.
What do you mean?
He said it 4 times. How's it good?
Yeah.
Something like
I
that.
don't know, would you do
Two good others on this side.
that?
You can think of everything.
So our perception of it changes, but it's the same always. Yeah. All right, going back together. We had an example with Andy suggested that it's what the authorities say, that's what good and evil is. Yeah, so we tried an example where let's imagine that Trump made it illegal to give anyone who is Mexican a job. Yeah, massively racist policy. And normally we say that racism is wrong. But let's now just imagine that heaps of America gets on board. Right? And they're like, yeah, I never wanted to give Mexicans jobs anyway. I always knew I was right. That's what they're going to say. Right? And suddenly they feel really validated and they feel like they're doing a good thing by not giving Mexicans jobs. Now the question is, if Nietzsche's right and moral values are just made and then abandoned or changed in society. Hey, there you go. Abdul? If moral values are just changed over time in society, then maybe Trump's racism could be what really becomes right or good. Does that make sense? But if you think that Trump's wrong, even if everyone agrees with him, you think there's something more to morality than just what we agree on. Yeah? You think that either Trump's like, either, you probably think that he's wrong, right? Because racism's a terrible thing to do. Generalizing based on a few specific cases is never a very good logical move anyway, right? And that's basically just what racism is. It's saying, oh, I saw this one person do this, so you all must be like that. Yeah? But, well, I think we all get the sense that it's a tricky question. Does everyone see how it's a tricky
I
question?
agree.
Excellent. Let's start reading, shall we? So, Beyond Good and Evil, section 199. Let's quickly have a look. In the reading, I've double-spaced a bunch of sections. But then if you turn the page over, do you guys see there's a section that is single-spaced?
Yeah.
These sections are not accessible. I've just included them because they're in between the sections that we are reading, yeah, properly, or in depth. And I think it's nice. Some people like to read the whole sections, all the bits. Abdul's laughing.
Like-
If you're not like Abdul and you like doing the little bit extra work, Abdul does too. Actually.
Abdul will.
Should we start reading? Excellent. I might read at the start, and then I might hand over to someone else. So, Beyond Good and Evil, section 199. Inasmuch as ever since there have been human beings, there have also been human herds. A herd is a family group, a community, a tribe, a nation, a state, or a church, any group. And always very many who obey compared to the very small number of those who command. Lots of people who follow the rules, and only a few people who make the rules. Considering that is to say that hitherto, before this, nothing has been practiced and cultivated among men better or longer than obedience. Nothing gets practiced more by people than obedience, following orders. It's fair to suppose that as a rule, a need for it is by now innate, inbuilt, as a kind of formal conscience which commands, thou shalt unconditionally do this, unconditionally not do that. In short, thou shalt. What does thou shalt mean? You will, or you should. You should, yeah? Or you will is actually, they're both what he means here. Yeah? He's saying that, what's he saying about the way we are, about human nature? We have an inbuilt drive to what? To agree is close, but actually he means obey. Why do we have an inbuilt need, a drive to obey? Because we're made to conform in groups, right? And he calls the groups herds. And he's saying that because we've been this way for so long, as long as there have been human beings, there have been human groups. Yeah? This is the way we've always been. We've been in herds, and we get used to living in a certain way. And so by now, because there are so many people who have to take orders, we have like an almost intrinsic, innate drive to it, a motivation to obey. Does that make sense? Let's write some notes down. You can write them in the margins or in books, don't mind where. Section 199, where am I?
It's a lot of damage. What kind of commands is Nietzsche thinking about with thou shalt? Divorce, was it? Laws, yeah, laws, good. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not murder. Yeah? Thou shalt love thy neighbour. These are the kind of commands he's thinking about. He's talking about the commands of morality. We'll read and understand, and then we might do a bit of a critique, some questions afterwards. All right. Ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Cool. This need, the need to follow commands, seeks to be satisfied and to fill out its form with a content. In doing so, it grasps about wildly, according to its degree, the degree of its strength, impatience, and attention, with little discrimination, as a crude appetite, like a crude emotional need, like a hunger or a greed, yeah, and accepts whatever commander, maybe parent, teacher, law, class prejudice, public opinion, shouts in its ears. How does public opinion shout in our ears? What's one way that you change the way you live based on public opinion? Sorry? Conforming, yep. So what kind of public opinion? What's a specific example?
Gay, same-sex marriage.
Same-sex marriage?
Yes.
For sure. Some people will agree with one side or the other of a same-sex marriage debate based on the public opinion that they care about. Or maybe more likely, the opinion of their friends.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Have you guys ever seen me wear a dress to work?
Dress. We would like to.
No?
We wouldn't like to.
You wouldn't like to?
We would like to.
You would like to? Well, I'm not going to fall to the weight of public opinion. But one of the reasons that I don't even think to do that, right, is because it's just publicly unacceptable or even just a bit different for me to wear a dress to work. Does that make sense to everyone?
Why?
Well, it's just public opinion. Why is a very good
Why is
question.
it unacceptable?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I'm just
agree with mine.
I think that'd be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I suspect I'd get away with it, guys.
Yeah.
But the reason I don't do it is because of the public opinion backlash. Does that make sense to everyone? Do you guys think I'd be able to teach my Year 10s very effectively?
No.
Much less effectively. Some of them. They'd be like, oh, this is cool. Yeah. But all of these things, public opinion, class prejudice, what's class prejudice?
Being showing prejudice in class.
different class, like you judge by your class, like birth level, which is sort of.
Yeah. If you judge someone in a different class to you as being stupid for a different kind of reason, like if you grow up and you're definitely in like the working class, right? You grow up in the working class, you might grow up thinking that everyone who owns a mansion is just a rich liberal politician. Does that make sense? And you think that they just waste their money and they keep it all for themselves. You have all these class prejudices. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And the opposite as well, by the way, vice versa. Class prejudice goes all the way. Teachers, parents, they give you commands as well. The strange narrowness of human evolution, its hesitations, its delays, its frequent retrogressions and rotations, are due to the fact that the herd instinct of obedience has been inherited best and at the expense of the art of commanding. Nietzsche's saying that human beings have evolved over time, not always very well. And he thinks that when we are devolving, it's because we're inheriting, maybe underline this bit, we're inheriting the herd instinct of obedience at the expense of the art of commanding. We'll keep reading and this will make more sense as we go. if we think of this instinct taken to its ultimate extravagance, do you want time to write?
Yes.
All right. No, we got like this.
Oh, no. I want this way.
I actually love reading Nietzsche, guys. He's the philosopher I spent the most time on at uni.
Oh, what do you like it?
No, I dislike him for a lot of reasons, but I think he has some incredibly valuable insights into the way that human beings work and are that people before him were just denying blatantly. And even though he was an incredibly depressed guy, a lot of the stuff he says really has shifted the way that everyone in the Western world has thought since him. He's had a massive effect on our society. In the same way that maybe people who invented the concept of democracy have had an effect on our society. Yeah, we don't actually know their names. We don't know, off the top of our head who invented democracy, right?
It was the Jedi.
But imagine it was the Jedi Order. I don't think so. Yoda's pretty in charge of that council.
So you're Obi-Wan.
I'm like, I want to be Qui-Gon. Is the
Yeah.
boss.
You can pull that off.
So even though we don't know who invented democracy, right? If they hadn't done that, and then if Athens hadn't survived as long as it did, think how different our world would be. Yeah, if there weren't democratic systems of government in the world, we have a very different world. Same way with Nietzsche. If he hadn't critiqued morality the way he had, our moral systems, especially in the West, would be very different. Not always a good thing necessarily, although he'd argue that that's not how goodness works. Yeah. Should we keep going?
Yes.
So let's do this. Obeying, commanding. For Nietzsche, you can't do both. You're either obeying or commanding. Yeah? Alright. If we think of this instinct taken to its ultimate extravagance, there would be no commanders or independent men at all. If we all obeyed the instinct to obey, if we all took it to the ultimate form, there'd be no commanders or independent men at all. If they existed, they would suffer from a bad conscience. And in order to be able to command, they'd have to practice a deceit upon themselves. They'd have to trick themselves in their own minds. The deceit, that is, that they too were only obeying. This state of things actually exists in Europe today, he says. I call it the moral hypocrisy of commanders. They know no way of defending themselves against their bad conscience other than to pose as executors of more ancient or higher commands, like commands of the ancestors or the constitution, of justice, of the law, or even of God. Or even to borrow herd maxims, sayings, from the herd's way of thinking and appear as the first servant of the people, for example, or as instruments of the common good. Okay, so this is about the moral hypocrisy of commanders. Why is he saying that commanders in Europe, when he was writing this, were hypocritical? What do commanders do?
Command.
Command, right? But what are they saying that they do? Obey. They're saying that they only obey. They are only like the first servant of the people. Yeah? A leader should serve its people. I do this for the good of our nation. All these kind of statements, Nietzsche thinks are said in bad conscience. What does that mean, bad conscience?
Bad reason.
Sort of. It means it doesn't gel with what's actually going on, like in your heart or something like that. In your soul, right? And he thinks that in probably many cases they've tricked themselves as well. Yeah? They don't really believe, they think they are the first servant of the people. I'm doing this for the good. If you wanted to be Prime Minister, you'd be like, I'm doing that for the good of Australia and my family and friends and all Australians. Yeah? He thinks you're a moral hypocrite though. Because as well as the need to obey, we all have a need to command. He thinks, actually, you should just come to terms with the fact that the reason you want to be Prime Minister of Australia is because you want to tell everyone what to do. But no one does that. If you ask ScoMo, it's like, why did you want to be Prime Minister? He'd be like, oh, look, there was a leadership battle. I didn't ask for the leadership battle, but Turnbull was challenged by Peter Dutton, and I didn't think that my boss, Turnbull, who I fully supported 100%, I didn't think he'd make it, so I stepped up to the plate, but I was forced into this situation where I was forced to become Prime Minister of Australia. I show you an interview later if you like, where he says pretty much exactly that. Yeah? But he would never admit to himself, I'm Prime Minister of Australia because I've worked for 30 years to become a politician to get into a position where I can be in charge of everyone. Right? Nietzsche is saying that's the fundamental drive that really drove him. And he may not even know it, right? And this is what he calls the moral hypocrisy of commanders. They say that they're acting to obey even when they're acting to command. Yeah?
Does a Prime Minister have like full authority over the country?
The Prime Minister in Australia has almost full control of everything. The Governor General is actually the one who acts like a president in Australia. Yeah. The Governor General is the one who runs the army and the police force, etc. But they're a placeholder person. They just sign whatever order the Prime Minister gives.
So, what if the Prime Minister said, I want to go to war right now in this country? Then
would it happen?
Yeah, would it happen? It would.
Yeah.
So we need a
yeah, it's just like if you drop a bomb on a country, so war's going to start.
No, but what do you like?
Put it this way: if someone attacked Australia, what would the response from Australia need to be? Well, if most people in Australia would say, we need to defend ourselves, we need to attack back, we need to prepare, right? If you have to put that through a parliamentary process where it gets voted on and signed off, that's not going to happen very quickly, right? In Australia, the Prime Minister can make that call whenever they want. Yeah? The Prime Minister is the one who declares war on another country. Yeah. Now in Australia, the Prime Minister gets voted in technically by who?
Us.
Kind of us, but who decides who the actual Prime Minister is? Who can make it? Yeah, it's the MPs in the party, right? Or it's the MPs that control the lower house, pretty much. Yeah? So for example, Malcolm Turnbull was Prime Minister, but then his MPs in his party, in the Liberal Party, decided that they didn't want him as leader anymore. So they chose Scott Morrison as the leader. And then, because they have a majority in the House, they made him Prime Minister. Yeah? So Australians don't technically vote in the leader of the country. We vote in our local MP, and they vote for the leader of the country. As opposed to America, where they directly vote in the person they want to be president. And that can't change for 4 years.
America, anyone can be president, right?
Anyone who's born in America can be president.
Literally anyone can go for president.
Yeah, anyone can go for president.
Yeah, kind of.
Did you know that the best funded candidate has won the presidential race for the last 40 years? So the presidential race maybe comes down to advertising.
That's crazy. Kanye West is going to win next year.
Kanye West.
is going to vote as well.
All right, let's briefly summarize the moral hypocrisy of commanders.
Kanye will do it.
Who does?
Yeah, definitely going to go.
The government.
Oh yeah, government.
Be more cautious.
You know, as a vote, as a democracy, you can vote for 2 people, you can vote for 5 people. Why? You're allowed. It's not voting. So, don't vote for Why can you get
Oh yeah, you know, because that would prevent you. That would have a democracy. Only have options where you go against each other.
No, until you can have a lot of people. If you do, I don't think you'll have a lot.
So, where are they?
It's a lot.
If you try to serve the country, they kill you.
Yeah.
In front of the camera. Put on the flagpole. With the flagpole. And then put on the flagpole. In front of the people in the town. They just, they begin.
Maybe I saw it this weekend.
Did they?
Yes.
Well, was North connected with the car?
Yeah, the hardest. That's how it.
Oh, so obviously North Korea didn't have any fans there.
No, it said that.
I think they used to lie and said that they would relocate.
Is it?
I thought they were saying.
Yeah, because they like. They,
Ah.
the kids like. They do.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Still one point next week.
Lots of notes here, guys, but it'll all sort of come together as we read. As well as this sort of herd instinct, Nietzsche thinks that we have also an inbuilt need to overcome or to achieve power. He thinks this is almost one of the most fundamental things of all forms of life, but particularly humans, is that we have this will to power, a will or a motivation or a drive towards achieving maximum power. Which in some ways might seem a bit depressing, right? Nietzsche would say it's only depressing if you're already convinced by a sort of herd morality, a need to obey. Good? Cool. Okay, so on the other hand?
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. On the other hand, the herd man in Europe today, makes himself out to be the only permissible kind of man and glorifies the qualities through which he is tame, peaceable, and useful to the herd as the real human virtues, namely public spirit, benevolence, consideration, industriousness, which means being a hard worker, moderation, modesty, forbearance, and pity. Who does that remind you of, that list of virtues? Aristotle, especially moderation, right? Temperance, pity, consideration, being kind to the people around you. Yeah? This is like a list of virtues that Aristotle would have been pretty happy with. In those cases, however, in which leaders and bellwethers are thought to be indispensable, there is attempt after attempt to substitute for them
and adding together of clever herd men. If we have a leader, there's attempt after attempt to, instead of the leader, replace him with a committee of clever people that are serving the herd. Yeah? This, for example, is the origin of all parliamentary institutions, such as democratic parliaments. Yeah? All this notwithstanding, what a blessing, what a release from burden becoming intolerable the appearance of an unconditional commander is for this herd animal European. The effect produced by the appearance of Napoleon is the latest great witness. The history of the effect of Napoleon is almost the history of the higher happiness this entire century has attained in its most valuable men and moments. What do you think you liked about Napoleon?
That's what he wants.
Sorry?
That's what he wants.
He does what he wants, right? He takes control.
His choice.
It's his choice, right? And he doesn't shrink away from the idea that he's the ultimate leader. Yeah? Napoleon was a soldier. Do you guys know the history of Napoleon a little bit? He was a soldier for a while. He grew sort of dissatisfied with the government, became a politician, and took over the whole government. Took over the whole country. He became like a rock star in France, to the point where he was fighting a losing battle in Egypt. This is my favourite Napoleon story, which I love telling. He was fighting a losing battle in Egypt, and the whole army was there, and they were surrounded on all sides. And they had their back to the ocean, but they only had one little boat, or like a few little fishing boats, right? Guess what he did? He jumped on the fishing boat at night time with a couple of his mates, and he sailed back to France. Guess what happened to the army? They all got slaughtered. Guess what happened to Napoleon? They made him the leader of France for life when he got back. They're like, oh, Napoleon, congratulations, you survived. We love you still. Yeah? Crazy guy. Anyway, moving back on this. Why is it a blessing for Napoleon? Why is it for Nietzsche a blessing that Napoleon would appear as an unconditional commander? How do you think he feels about this herd instinct to obey?
Doesn't really like it.
He doesn't like it, right? He thinks it's small or morally hypocritical. He thinks it's weak. Yeah? He doesn't think it's the noble part of what being human is. Being human for him is about achieving, is about maximizing, is about being noble, is about commanding. Yeah? Achieving full human potential. All right. We're going to stop there for a little bit and do some questions. So, with the people next to you, on page 249, let's do quick answers to questions 1 to 4 of the right questions.
Yeah. Not really. Soon. We could show this. So, we'll get into the questions in a second. First of all, how do you become a politician? That's a very good question. You have to be, you can run, anyone can run to be a politician in any area. So I don't know what the local area is for here, but I suspect it's held by Labor. And when the election happens, you can put your name in. You just have to send your name. If you're in a party, you have to send your party name. And you send like, I don't know what it is, I'm going to say $400, but I have no idea, something like that, into the Electoral Commission, and then they put you on the ballot. Yeah?
And if you know enough people in your electorate and they all vote for you over other people, you'll be a politician for 4 years.
Also, you need to know people.
You don't need to know anyone, you just need them to vote for you. Yeah? Now how do most people get votes? Most people get votes because even though you don't know the politician's name, you know the party, right? So the most reliable way to get voted in as a politician is to join a political party that will then give you heaps of money for advertising, and just people will just vote for you because you're part of the party they support. Yeah? For example, when I vote, this might be something you want to think about doing. I vote mostly dependent on who the people who are going to be in charge of the federal government will be. I don't actually really care who my local member is. I do a bit. If they're a complete dud, I probably wouldn't vote for them. But if they seem basically competent, like most people are, then I actually care more about who our Prime Minister is than who the member of my local area is. Yeah. But to get nominated as someone in a political party, you have to figure out how to become a nominee of that party for a particular area. You have to be nominated by the party and confirmed, usually by a local vote in a local party. So you have to join the party to get started. You might join the Labor Party. Yeah, and then you go along to Labor Party meetings in the local area, and there might be another 2,000 people in this area who regularly go to meetings. And then you have to convince all of them that you'd be the best leader of that little group. And then you have to get nominated by people from this group and from other groups nationally. To do that in the Labor Party, you typically need some sort of history of activism or some sort of relevant experience. For example, a lot of Labor people who get nominated have been part of the union movement. They're looking after, a union is a group of workers get together and they say, we're going to look after workers' rights in a particular sector. For example, the Australian Education Union is a big teachers' union. So I send them $70 every year and they employ 50 lawyers that look after any teacher problems, workplace disputes in Australia. Does that make sense?
Mr. Coles was part of a...
Mr. Coles is our local union representative. He's actually even more than that. Of all the local schools around here, he's the representative of all the local schools.
Wow.
Now, if Mr. Coles keeps going higher within the union, he might become like the secretary or the treasurer or even the leader of the union.
Wow.
And if he does that, then Mr. Coles would be in a really good position to apply to be a Labor nominee. And he would be maybe nominated for an area.
Maybe
And
that's his plan.
if he was really clever and smart and talked to the right people, it's definitely about knowing the right people, then he might even get nominated in a safe Labor seat, where he's very likely to get voted into Parliament. Right? There's no point getting nominated as a Labor MP in an area that always votes for Liberals. Yeah? You're never going to be a politician in that area. So if Mr. Coles does really well in that and he gets voted in as a Labor MP, then he has to start lobbying or talking to all the other Labor MPs that are in Parliament. And he might vote for someone to be Prime Minister within the party, for example, or he might agitate for certain issues. Probably he has things that he cares about, like maybe he cares particularly about climate change, but he doesn't particularly care about road congestion. Whatever it is, people have different issues they care about. And if over time he's very clever and influential and has a big impact and people seem to like him, the party might even decide to make him the leader of the party. And then if the Labor Party gets enough voters in the House of Representatives, Mr. Coles will be Prime Minister.
Yay.
That's a feature I like.
That's a future you want to be in?
Yeah, I like that.
How good would it be if you guys could, in like 5 or 10 years, vote for Mr. Coles in your local election?
I would.
That's pretty awesome.
I would.
It is pretty cool. I'd vote for it.
Can you convince him to do it?
I'll think about it. How about that? He's actually maybe, Mr. Coles might be teaching you 12 philosophy next year.
No, sir.
Which means that he'll be watching these videos maybe. So, Mr. Coles for Prime Minister. But you guys brought this up, so this is not my fault. Should we quickly go through the questions? How much time?
Yes.
Oh, not very much time. Let's quickly go through the questions. And maybe we'll just discuss these other ones as well. And we might not get to section 201 today, unfortunately. So according to Nietzsche, why do most people seek to be commanded? Kevin?
Because of that instinct mentality thing.
Good, the herd instinct, right?
Yeah.
Within humans, part of our nature is that we have a herd instinct. Why do we have a herd instinct?
Because we like to follow.
We like to follow, but why do we like to follow?
Part of our nature.
Part of our nature? Why is it part of our nature?
In me.
History of submission.
Because we've got a history of submission, because we've always, as long as human beings have existed, we've existed in groups. That's the way we are. We've existed in groups. Why do you think human beings, if you had to say, have existed in groups? Chances of survival, right? Nietzsche thinks that our values and the way we are, the way we've evolved, is a process of natural selection. We do the things that are successful. Yeah? The reason we do things that are successful is because the successful is what gets us to survive. It's what gets us to thrive. Yeah? Cool. Number 2, what are some of the implications of this need for obedience? Andy?
Result of long history of submission.
Yeah, it's the result of a long history of submission, but what else might it mean? What does it mean that we have a need to obey? What do we do because we have the need to obey?
Follow orders.
We follow orders. Very good. But not only that, we flail around. We have an inbuilt need to obey, not one that we're conscious of, guys. One that we just follow, like because we're hungry. We find food, right? We don't always think, oh, I'm really hungry. The thing I'm going to do today is find food, right? We're not always conscious of it. It's just a thing we do. In the same way, we have a need to obey. So we flail around trying to find authorities to obey. For example, my sister, when she was in year 11, went crazy over Justin Bieber, right? And she would like buy all his albums and had pictures of him on the walls. And if he had told her to like go out and buy 7-Eleven every day, she would have done it. Does that make sense? Nietzsche thinks that this sort of thing, this appeal to authority to tell us how to live our lives and what to do, is an inbuilt need. And it comes out of an evolutionary necessity. Does that make sense? Alright, so he's commenting on the way we are. Number 3. Oh, actually, very quickly, think about it in your own lives. What are some ways that you obey others or rules or etc.? Talk to the person next to you right now.
I don't cheat on exams. I don't cheat on exams.
Yes.
Good, so I heard don't cheat on exams, road rules, parents, I do what they say, I'm nice to my brother and sister, all that kind of stuff. Yeah? Nietzsche would say all of that is a result. The reason we happily do those things is because we have a natural need to obey. Nietzsche would say. Number 3. What does Nietzsche mean when he says that to be able to command, the commander would have to practice a deception upon themselves? They have to command in the name of something else. Yeah, to say that actually they're obeying. Even though, if they really understood themselves better, Nietzsche is saying, they would understand that they're there to command. To cover up their bad conscience is fine. Yeah, that's good. So their bad conscience means that they haven't come to terms with in themselves the fact that the reason they are commanding is because they want to command. Yeah? Nietzsche is saying that within all of us, we have a desire or a need, a motivation, a drive, a will to command, a will to power. Does that make sense? And he says that if we pretend when we're driving for power, if we're going for power and we pretend we're just obeying, we're acting in bad conscience, in bad faith. We're not being true to who we are. Does that make sense? Cool. 4. Why is an unconditional commander a blessing for the herd? It's a blessing because what the herd really wants is someone to tell them what to do. Yeah? People most want someone to tell them what to do. And so for the herd, being told what to do is a blessing. Perhaps more than that, a herd ruled by a sheep is not for Nietzsche a good situation. Just sheep ruling sheep. Nietzsche is not interested. Nietzsche wants more
Could
nobility
everyone
in his
please
leaders.
listen to the lunchtime announcements? Mr. Serrett, could you please sing Mr. Blakey at the start of lunchtime? Student curriculum leaders, There is a meeting today at lunchtime in B113. That will be at the beginning of lunchtime. And also there's a meeting for girls in physics. Students attending the girls in physics breakfast on Wednesday. Could you please see Miss Howell in 8-4 at the beginning of lunchtime, please?
Just before you go, Abdul, what would Callicles think about Nietzsche?
Yes.
Remember the chants and incantation stuff?
Yeah.
And how like the groups of weak people are suppressing the strong?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like Nietzsche in a Callicles in a nutshell, yeah?
Yeah.
Nietzsche and Callicles are on the same page with this.
They're boys.
See you guys.
Let us
Oh, I forgot to give you
Just my
homework.
video today. No homework.
I might put homework on Facebook on my phone. Alright, on Tuesday. There we go.
Later, sir.